In the prior lesson, we talked about how we could use the local host reserved IP address to test our websites privately and locally before deploying them to the open internet. But once you're ready to make your website or service public, you can't just use any IP address that you want. Instead, you have to use what's referred to as public IPs. And these are the ranges of available public IPs. But again, you can't just pick one public IP address from that list at random and configure it on a server. Public IPs are assigned by region and are managed by different organizations. And these are the main organizations and their respective regions. These organizations are given blocks of public IPs, which are then distributed to different countries. In the respective countries, the different internet service providers or ISPs and large organizations can acquire those IP blocks. The ISPs then redistribute those blocks to their customers so that customers can have access to the internet. This is important because you need to have a public IP address in order to be able to use other services on the internet. As we saw before, Cyber's address is 35.186.185.224, and that is Cyber's public IP address, which means that no one else at that time can also use that IP address on the open internet. And by the way, you can easily figure out what your own IP address is using a website like whatismyipaddress.com or searching for that directly on Google. This is the IP address that websites or services that you visit and use on the internet see when you're accessing them, so it serves to uniquely identify you. This alone could be a lengthy lesson because it raises a lot of questions when it comes to privacy and security. Since services can see your IP address, they can use that to track your location, track you across browsers and devices, etc. And so people sometimes use different techniques or tools to mask their real IP. For example, you might have heard of the term proxies or VPNs, and these can be used to browse the web or take actions under a different IP address than your real public IP address. Again, this is a very large topic for another lesson, but I wanted to quickly mention that. Now, a question arises. Since we have public IPs, does that mean we also have private IPs? Well, the title of this lesson gives it away, so no surprises. Yes, there are private IPs. And these are the ranges for private IPs. Now, as you can see in those ranges, you can find IP addresses that we've already been using throughout this course. These private ranges can be used by anyone. These IPs are assigned to the different hosts in a network, like laptops, smartphones, printers, etc. And since they're private, they can be reused. But wait, we just said that we need a public IP to be able to connect to other public IP addresses on the internet. Yes, this is another function that routers help with, and this is called Network Address Translation, or NAT for short. Their role is pretty much to take a public IP address and interconnect it with several private IPs in a private network. So you can kind of think of all this as phone numbers and extensions. A company's phone number has to be unique and it has to be reachable from anywhere, which is the public IP. Otherwise, a phone call could end up in the wrong place. But the extension numbers are internally assigned, and the same extension number can be used in other companies, which is just like private IPs. And there's also a device that interconnects the traffic between extensions and all the calls that are going outside, much like a router does. And so the NAT function helps a lot because this allows us to save on the number of public IP addresses. And with this, you don't need to assign a public IP to each and every single device. This is important because there's a limited number of public IP addresses that are available. So with this system, we're able to drastically increase the number of available IP addresses in private networks. And that's also why if you check your IP address like we did earlier from any device in your home connected to the same network, you will get the same IP address. Instead of your laptop having one public IP address and your mobile phone having a different one, they'll both have the same public IP. But again, your router keeps track of all of that through the NAT, so that when requests are going out to the open internet and responses are received, your router knows exactly to which device the response should go to. So now that we understand the importance of having both public and private IP addresses, and we understand, or at least at a conceptual level, that routers use something called Network Address Translation, aka NATs, to translate private to public IP addresses and back, you may complete this lesson and move on to the next.